Hello everyone, welcome to Truth Talks TV. I am your host, Katarina Ilic, along with my gorgeous guest, Emelie Archer. Welcome, Emelie. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. So Emelie is for those of you who may not know who are watching, is an igniter of paradigms, although I like your other way of referring to that, which is paradigm fucker.
Ow!
A poet and curator of forbiddenlife.org. And you know what? That right there, just the title of that site is like tantalizing. It's like, ooh, what is that?
Thank you.
Yes, it's amazing. I love your work, so I'm so excited to get to talk to you.
Yay, I'm super stoked to be here.
So what is our forbidden life and why is it important that we live it?
Ooh, such a good question. Well, let me tell you a little backstory about my forbidden life, because I did not always live this way. I came from a super traditional background. I mean, not like conservative traditional, but just like your everyday American upbringing. You know, my parents worked and I went to school and I had good grades. I got straight A's in high school and was a very good girl. I mean, I wasn't a good girl for the sake of like outside pressures. I just thought that's what I should be. Like, I should be this good girl. I should be obedient. I should be, quiet. I should be good at everything. And I had a lot of pressure that I put on myself, really, to be perfect in every single way. Not all that abnormal, unfortunately, for girls in our culture. And as I went to college and kind of started to learn how to loosen up a little bit, I looked back and I realized, how little of a sense of fun and adventure I had in my growing up years. And I was really sad about that. And yet I didn't really know like how to turn that on in myself in a lasting way beyond, bartending and going crazy and being a DJ in London and like going way far outside of the like good girl box, right?
Wow, yeah.
And then I settled down. I got married to my college boyfriend and we ended up buying a house by the beach in San Diego. We had a white picket fence. We had a golden retriever in the yard. We had a baby together. And still, I felt like there was something missing. Like, here I am blonde, I'm thin, I'm in San Diego, I have a picket fence, I have a lawn, I have a vegetable bed, I have a job, I have hardwood floors, I have stainless steel appliances, like everything that I could possibly acquire to, make myself happy, I had. I had a great shoe collection. I mean, I literally had everything stupid that we're told that is going to make us feel better about ourselves. Yeah. And there was still something missing. And so I thought, I'm really tired of getting my kicks from fantasy fiction. Like, I don't want to be reading Twilight and going, this is so stupid. Why am I so turned on by that? 17-year-olds. And so I was talking to my girlfriend and I was talking to her on Skype, much like this. And she said, how are you? And instead of just the rote, I'm fine, I started to cry. And I thought, I'm not fine. Like, I am not okay with just being fine anymore. Like, this is not okay. Something's wrong. And I don't know what else to do. Like, I have done yoga. I have done all these things. Like, what am I supposed to do to feel good? Because this is bullshit. If I can't feel good, how can anybody feel good? And yet I know there's people out there who are living a much happier life than I am, and I want to find out how. Yeah. So I started to do like this in-depth research of how do you create actual happiness? How do you do this in our everyday Western civilized life without going into a monastery? How do you achieve a sense of enlightenment and a lit up existence in the everyday life? And how can I do it for myself? Because if I can do it, then I know anybody can do it, because I've tried everything else. Wow. And so I talked to my girlfriend and she said, are you happy in your relationship? And all of a sudden I felt in my body, a distinct no, there's something, no, that's probably a big part of this. And, it seems silly to be like, oh, I'm going to pin this on my relationship. But a lot of it did have to do with the partnership that I was in at the time. And I didn't know what to do about that because I had a baby and we had this whole life together. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? I have to do something different, and I don't know where to go. And my friend decided, well, I have a lot of friends who live in Colorado, and they all seem to be extremely happy, and they're doing this whole like open relationship thing. And I was like, put the brakes on! Oh my god!
Like what?
Yeah, I am a good girl. I don't. This is like way uncomfortable for me. Maybe if it's uncomfortable for me, I should look at that. Like I don't know. Maybe I should research it. I mean, there's lots of ways to learn about something. One way is to go out and be messy. Another way is to do research and be honest. And I chose that path. And so I started to read about open relationships, and it opened a whole door through which I ended up accessing my forbidden life. And I'm sure we'll talk about more of those details and decision points later. But that's kind of the background of how I got to this point and recognized that there was a whole life that I wasn't allowing myself to have. That once I gave myself permission to go outside of normal, all of a sudden, like, my entire universe just went like that. And I have, like, the most amazing life now. The most amazing life. And I really have my whole background in every relationship that I've had to thank for it, because it's been a huge learning ground. It's been amazing.
Oh my gosh. Oh, like it lights me up just hearing you talk and reading your posts, everything. It's like, oh, I can like feel it vibrating through my body. So
it's a true girl.
Yes. So you decided then, and what I had read too, is that you decided instead of going the divorce route to have this open relationship route, because you said you found that people who actually went the divorce route aren't necessarily happier, right?
Not necessarily, yeah. So at the time, this was actually the first time I read this study, and it stopped me from getting divorced, was in 2008. And I had just had a big blowout fight with my then spouse, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, this isn't what I want. This isn't what either one of us wants. I don't know what to do. And then I came across this study, which I learned later was by this like conservative Christian organization, which is fine because it doesn't invalidate their data. But I was just like interesting that that's the spin on the story. But anyway, so I read the study, and it says that in a long-term study of couples' happiness, those that stayed married were no happier than the ones who ended up choosing to get divorced. And at the time, I thought, well, that's crazy. So I could just throw this entire thing away and not be any happier at the end of the day? Like, that's stupid. I should just work on what I have. I'm going to make the commitment right now. 2008, I'm going to work on what I have. And that's what I chose to do at that time. And it was the right thing. Absolutely. Absolutely the right thing for me to have done. It ended up creating the breeding ground, literally, for my son to emerge into this planet. And later, because we waited to end up dissolving our relationship, we did it in the right way at the right time. And so it was a much easier transition. So I had chosen not to get divorced. I had chosen to go the open relationship route after I had read about it. And I thought, okay, so in theory, this whole open marriage thing does seem plausible. It does seem like it makes sense biologically. It does make a lot of, it just resonates, At the time, it really resonated with me. And I thought, okay, there's a reason for this. I don't know what it is, but I know that I'm not ready to leave. I'm not ready to throw this thing out. I want to make sure I've done everything that I can do to make it work. And if it still doesn't work, then we figure it out. Then we work on that. And so, because of the books that I read, one of which was The Ethical Slut, and the other was Opening Up, kind of controversial title on that first one, but very good. Both of them are very well written, and they have a lot of good conversation points of how to start to craft the language around what the rules will be in your relationship, how to talk to your partner about opening the relationship. And so that's where I really learned a lot of the communication skills that ended up being the hugest gift of the open relationship. Because I learned how to talk about my needs in a way that didn't degrade the person I was talking to and didn't make them feel less than.
Right.
And so as I'm now moving forward in life, I have this whole skill set to thank the open relationship for. Because I learned how to have a very controversial request, of my husband, saying, I need something else. It's impossible in this relationship for us to be fully satisfied, and there's nothing wrong with us because of that fact. Like, we just need to be able to be free to explore. I need to be able to be free to explore. It doesn't mean that you're not adequate. It just means I need more, and it was very, very tricky ground to navigate, but I took my time. It wasn't something that for me anyway, rushed into. It was a few months of really sitting and looking at the language. How did I want to talk about this? Did I really want to open up this big, huge can of worms?
Right.
Did I want to invite in external criticism? Did I want to have sex with someone else, after 10 years? Terrifying thought, And so I really had to get clear, is this what I want? Is this really what I want? And at the time, it was what I wanted. And so after those few months, I talked about it. And because of the way that I was able to communicate, my ex got on board and was like, well, actually, this does make sense. In theory, it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious in reality and in practice how it will work, but, well, shit, let's try,
Yeah.
And so that's the road that we went down.
And so see, I'm kind of in this place, and obviously you came to me at a perfect time as well. I'm not in a marriage or an open relationship or anything like that, but just also fucking my own paradigms, and and starting to really be more and more honest with myself and authentic. So one of the things that I would always think, first of all, with an open relationship, and these are the judgments that now are starting to crumble down a little bit because I'm becoming, opening up, is like, well, why, why be married if you need to have an open relationship and you need to be with other people, first of all. Second of all, did you ever fear while you were doing this, does this mean I'll never be able to be with one person? Are my desires abnormal? Those kinds of things. Does this mean that I'm always going to have multiple partners and I'm never going to be able to satisfy with just one person?
Right. And all those questions did come up. And at the same time, interestingly, for some reason, either it was the state of mind I was in or the place in my life that I was in, they didn't stick around for very long. It was like a thought would come in and it would just go. And I would just be like, yeah, no, I know that's not true. I know that it doesn't mean anything about my ability to be to find love, or my ability to connect, or my ability to be committed, because I understood firsthand, especially after some outside experiences, the first few, it was like, this doesn't affect my commitment to my partner at all. In fact, what it did at first was really make me feel grateful to him for giving me the freedom to explore. And so I literally woke up one morning and I had this other partner next to me, and not that I had very many, I didn't, but I had this other partner, and I looked at him, and the first thought that came to my mind was, I am so grateful to my husband that I'm allowed to do this. What an amazing person he is to be confident enough in himself and in us, that this is okay with him, somewhat okay. I mean, of course, he wasn't super, super comfortable all the time, and we had to have some pretty rough conversations, but we did, and we were so proud of ourselves because we came through what could be, and often is, the factor that breaks up people, or at least destroys trust between couples, and instead, we became more honest, we became more trusting, and more grateful for each other. And so I was like, wow, I mean, this idea really works. And so that's how we continued. For a few months, we continued like this, and it was just this literally opening up experience of recognizing that love is a state of mind and a state of being, not a state of ownership, and that we can give each other freedom, and it only grows your love. And that can be defined a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to mean sexual freedom, which I'm now learning. But this happened to be the place for me, the incubator for me to find out, how do I define love? How do I experience love? What do I need in relationship? And how curious to be about life and the universe, and open to circumstances changing. And so that state of openness is what's really served me to create this forbidden life, where in the open relationship that I had with my ex-husband, I met someone, and all of a sudden, it was different. I mean, it was very, very different from the minute I saw his picture. It was like, oh no, this isn't what I expected, you know, and it didn't go quite that immediate, like, this is going to be where I go with my life, but it was immediately a different type of connection. It wasn't like somebody who just fulfilled a small need that I had sexually or a small need that I had conversationally or intimately. It was different, and it was different from the very first email exchange. And I told my husband up front, as I always did, you know, I've met someone, and he was like, again? You know, it's much easier for women to find men when they're partnered, you know, if they're in an open partnership, than it is for men to find women, because women don't want a man who's already got a partner. Women want a partner, you know, they want to be the one. And so I had no trouble, you know, I had my choice basically of whoever wanted to date me was like, great, I don't have to do anything but just sleep with you and talk to you. Perfect. Like, awesome, you're already married? Sweet.
Sign me up.
You know? And so it was just interesting to watch all of this about our societal stories in relationship and living this microcosm of doing it differently, watching our friendships just explode like, oh, we can't be friends with you guys anymore. You're way too dangerous for my own relationship. You know, like you're threatening me because you're doing something else and it's looking like it's a lot of fun and I don't want to, no, I can't do that. Like I need to hold on to my partner. And it was just interesting to watch friendships dissolve, you know, almost immediately. Watch my family go into total like freak out mode. His family didn't know, although I did have plenty of videos talking about the subject online, so they did find out eventually. But you know, I had nothing to hide about any of it because the way that I was approaching it wasn't about secretively usurping some system. It was like, let's fuck this paradigm. I'm exploring. I want to talk about it. No one's talking about it. And I don't know what's going to happen. Like, how fun,
right.
You know? How fun
how
to live
brave of you. Oh my God. Like, how creative.
It was terrifying. I mean, It was really terrifying. And also really enlivening. It was like, this is what adventure feels like. You know, like when you're walking this path and you don't even know where the path is, but you got to find it. Otherwise, you're going to fall down that cliff. You know, that's kind of how it felt. And that's exhilarating. And at the same time, it's really hard to maintain that state in the long term because you're like in a state of, you know, stress, like your cortisol is like through the roof in your body and you may look lit up, but eventually things need to calm down and you need to find your roots. And I think that I needed to reground myself in the experience. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken away the lessons that I did and I wouldn't have been able to craft this whole mindset and life approach that's enabled what I've done now to develop. So I meet this guy. And I tell my husband, and he's like, I think he could sense something was different too. And so we hadn't met in person.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry. So did
yes,
you? So
please.
You guys obviously like you went into this open relationship, you know, territory, not knowing, of course, what would happen out of it, whether you would end your relationship, whether you would end up staying together, but you were just open to like, let's continue being honest and authentic. Okay.
Yeah, and my intention at the time was not to end the relationship. Like I was doing this as a way, ironically, to save the relationship because I wanted to maintain our family structure and yet still be happy, you know, and I wanted to figure out, is there a way in this current circumstance that I can have both? And for a while I could. And then things changed.
Right.
And I had to be okay with things changing. Yeah. And that was really scary too because as you know, when you're married and you have a family, like to change that structure, it gets a lot of flack from external people. And you also look at yourself and wonder, did I fail at this? Like, did I totally fuck this up? Am I messing up my kid right now? You know, what stories go through your head? You know, it's pretty incredible to watch them sometimes. And it was challenging not to judge myself, really, because I'm the good girl. Right. I don't do these things. Right. You know, I don't hurt people. And the way that I did it, luckily, reduced the amount of hurt from other people that I caused. But I did cause pain in people. My mom was pained at watching what she knew was going to end up being a divorce. And she was like, you know, it just pained her because she'd been through 2 of them and, you know, had seen it firsthand. So it's even when your intention is not to cause pain in your actions, sometimes you still do. And when I was going through this and so like flaming about it, all I could see was, I'm happy. I want you to be happy for me. Why can't you just be happy for me? Instead of being like, I'm happy and I'm really sorry this is painful for you. And so now I can see a better way to have approached the people who were worried about me and who were fearful and who were hurting. But at the time I was so like in it. I was so in it and I was so happy and I was so curious that I couldn't apologize. It was like, what should I apologize for? I feel fantastic. Yeah. But I had to get to that place of like absolute ownership, self-love, self-respect, like owning my desires before I could really develop that sense of compassion. And that is why I now have this Forbidden Life platform, because without having broken all those paradigms and learning to love myself and learning to ask for what I want, because what I want isn't very much, it's just to be happy. That's the way that I now understand other people's hearts. I understand the pain that the world is in, and I feel like I can help fix it. I can help shift the few people that I touch every day so that each one of us acts as little ripples of light. Yes. And that's our duty. I mean, our duty as a privileged Western resident with so much freedom is to find happiness and spread it in the world instead of continuing to poison it.
Right.
And you can't do that if you're full of poison inside of yourself.
Yeah.
So that's the imperative of creating the Forbidden Life, and things changed, like I said. So there's lots of more to the story.
Right, yeah, and that's what's it's so amazing about your story is that, like you said, so you do come upon this guy that you just felt like it was different, and so it's almost like, can it be a bit of that? And you're careful, I think, not careful, but you express in your posts that, even just one that I was just reading again, about the, happily ever after is a lie. But here, your relationship that you have now with this man that you came upon, Tiger.
Tiger.
It does kind of sound like that. It does kind of sound like the fairy tale. I mean,
I know.
And so
it's a new fairy tale.
In a new kind of way, huh? Like in a different way.
Yeah. So I think I was thinking about this morning as I was brushing my teeth, actually, and I was like, why is it? How did we get to this place, Tiger and I? How did we get to this place of like, fruitfully monogamous commitment out of this crazy, crazy situation? How did we end up at the place that most people are striving for from the beginning? And I thought, that's exactly what we did. That's exactly how we did it. It's because we started off with absolutely no way of having expectations of each other. There was no way to know where this was going, because I was married to someone else in an open relationship. He was moving to South America 3 weeks after we met. And so it was like, there was no way we could do anything but be present with each other. That was all we could do. Because to look at those outside circumstances would immediately be like, well, this is fucked. This isn't going anywhere. And so it would have been very easy for the old me and for most women to either not have the experience at all or to immediately dismiss it as being not the right thing. And I think that the gift of opening my relationship was that it enabled me to be really, really present with whoever I was with, and to not have expectations of where it was going. Like, because we didn't have a future together, it's the only reason we have one now. And so
it's amazing.
I'm like, it's amazing. And because there really isn't a future, like when I talk in my blog post about happily ever after is a lie, it's because we are sold a package by Disney, by Hollywood, by every single industry trying to teach us that we're not enough on ourselves to be happy, that we have to have external relationships, that we have to have this stuff, that we have to have the right diet, the right body, everything in order to be fulfilled. We are sold this story for a reason, because money is what fuels our culture. Profits is what fuels our culture. But when you start to learn that none of those things are true, that happily ever after doesn't actually exist. What does exist is happily ever now, because now is the future. Now is the past. Everything comes down to now. Yeah. And so that is what makes it much, much easier to imagine a real commitment with someone. Because you are not committing to forever in the sense that forever is until you grow old and die. You are committing to forever being this minute, I am choosing this. This minute, I am feeding this partnership. This minute, I am choosing to love you. This minute, I am choosing love. Mm-hmm. And that is how you create a lifelong commitment with someone. Because we don't know how long life is going to be. You know, it could be ending tomorrow. And I want to say, till death do us part. I really do. And the only way for me to do that in good conscience and in truth is to commit to it by the moment. Mm. And that means sometimes signing a piece of paper and having a judge witness it and getting married, like getting human married, we call it, because we go by fox and tiger. So we're like, our fox and tiger selves, our souls got married. We actually got married on a soul level on May 13th because we had this like crazy energetic experience. And, you know, we're like, we are one. Like, this is, yep, we just got married. And we are actually okay with that, you know?
Wow.
But our human selves are not married yet. And we actually are planning to get married because I feel like the most powerful way to teach this model of marriage and to teach presence in relationship is to live inside of the paradigm that needs breaking and bust it from the inside out. So that is what we are doing. And that is the breeding ground for all of the content on my site and for Forbidden Love, which is a course that I'm designing with my husband. Oh. And that feels so forbidden because I know we're not really married. So it's like, but he's totally my spouse. So, right. You know, we just are breaking things right and left.
I love it. I mean, it's so freaking inspiring. It's ridiculous, and it's just like I love reading every little delectable moment. Oh,
it's such a learning ground, and you know, things shifted really quickly for us when we found out how resonant we were, and it was just like, well, I can't say no to this. You know, I can't say no. I have to say yes.
And it's just a feeling you had, right? Because we always. You know, I think we all, to a certain extent, you know, not maybe all, okay, I mean, but a lot of us do want that partnership, that soul connection, soulmate, you could call it, or twin
or
souls.
Twin flame, or yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you know, and as I do myself, and you know, aside from that fairy tale, which I want to get to that in a second too, but like, you know, it's like, wait, how will I know? But it's like, you just know, right? You just feel it. Like there's no...
Yeah, and I think that the key that enabled all of this to unfold, I actually did a flowchart because I'm also a scientist. Like my dad is a physics PhD, so I have this total like analytical side in addition to all the artsy and like wordy poetness. So cool. And so I did a flowchart. Like how did this line up for me? Like what happened in my life to trigger this situation to unfold? Because I want to go back and assess, how did I feel at those crucial junctures when I could have made a different decision? Like what in me told me to say yes to this?
Right.
And I really learned from looking at my patterns, like how did my body feel when I was leaning into something versus running away from something? You know, it's a totally different feeling of running toward what's right versus what's running away from what's wrong. Like, that still feels like you're closed off and escaping versus opening up into. And so, like, you literally feel it in your body when you're, like, super excited about something and super lit up, and your whole body just says yes. I mean, it tells you yes, literally. And I now know, like, muscle testing techniques to verify whether those feelings are accurate, where you can actually learn from your subconscious before your brain has the language to tell you. Ooh. And so it's very fun stuff, and very, like, I mean, it's dead accurate every single time. And so I looked at what happened, and I felt these moments of yes. And usually they were very scary things. Like when I first heard about open relationships, there was something in that concept that I needed to learn from. And it wasn't necessarily non-exclusivity sexually, but what it was an open mind, an open heart, a recognition that love lies within, and language to craft your honest truth in a way that's loving. And that is precious. You know, that is a skill set that can then be translated in different ways for people who don't want to go into the this crazy breeding ground of open relationships to learn the skill set. You know, not everybody wants to go down that road,
Right.
and I don't need that road anymore. I don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I have an exclusive relationship, but the way that we approach it is with openness. And so it's like, we kind of do have an open relationship in the fact that I don't feel like I own him. He doesn't feel like he owns me. And yet we don't need or want anyone else. We talk about being exclusive. We commit to each other that we're exclusive. But it feels like a union versus a forced choice out of a construct of how a relationship should be. I mean, it feels like a choice. And Wendell Berry, in his book Unsettling of America, which was written in 1974 and yet has a lot of, unfortunately, real continuing truths to how we are damaging things around this planet. But he has a chapter called Fidelity, and he ended up writing a whole book on the subject. But what he says is that true fidelity only emerges from a state of choice. It is not a state of being handed to you and saying, this is what you need to do, here's the rules. It's having the choice of being with anyone and still coming home. And that is so much more powerful, isn't it? Than being like, I want to be with you, but I have to go home.
Yeah.
Instead of, I could be with you, but I want to go home. You know? And there's a just whole different approach to that. And it can result in the same thing, right? It can look the same, but it feels totally different. And that's where the new marriage paradigm comes into play.
I'm like, this is bringing tears to my eyes. Sorry. I knew this would happen.
I always cry. It's fine.
It's totally fine. Yeah, that's one of the things, because when I, you know, and it's been maybe a slow process for me, but of sort of evaluating my own beliefs and things, my desires, and like I said, I think I'm just now maybe starting to open up to that even more. But I've seen it, and because I was very much the good girl as well. Like I was, you know, part of the Christian church for many years, and I mean, like really involved, where I was like close with the pastor's wife. I was like involved in ministry, you know, going every Sunday and Wednesday. And anyway, so it's, you know, there's this like deep desire within me to have this like life, you know, partner. But like I needed to start questioning these things. Okay, well, wait, maybe that's not, you know, maybe that is just a lie. Maybe what about marriage? Is that just, you know, like starting to look at these things? And one of the things that I remember feeling into when I was looking at marriage just in general, just for myself, was what you just said exactly. It's like, I don't want somebody to be with me because we're committed to each other in a marriage. I want somebody to choose me every day, and I choose him every day. And that's what I've seen you write. It's like we choose every moment, like we choose every day.
That's right. That's right. And it makes it feel so much more real. I mean, it makes it feel so much more real. You're really looking at your commitment. You're not assuming anything anymore. And I think that that's the real danger. And that's where marriages start to go stagnant when you look at how traditional marriage has been set up, is that it does make you feel safer when you're in a traditional marriage and you feel like, okay, well, the work is done. But the person, I love this, actually, my friend Chris Gladley says that if you stop doing your work that you were doing when you first partnered with someone, if you stop doing your work, you're breaking your commitment with them because you're changing who you are. Who you are is somebody who is constantly developing, changing, learning, thriving, growing. And if you stop that process in order to feel safe in a relationship, you're breaking trust with them because you're no longer who they married. You're no longer who they partnered with. They partnered with someone who was curious, and instead you lay down and go to sleep. You know, and marriage has been a state of sleeping for so long where we stop thinking about our choices. We stop thinking about our partner as someone to cherish. You know, we say these vows and then they go out the window almost immediately. We spend all this money on a huge wedding and no one talks about what does the everyday marriage look like? Is there a way to extend the honeymoon effect throughout the life of the relationship? And I believe yes. There is. There's a book on the subject that just came out by Bruce Lipton called The Honeymoon Effect. And it's brilliant.
Really?
Highly recommend it. You know, he's been with his partner for 17 years after a 17-year period of saying, I'm never getting married again. I'm never getting married again. And he relates it to cell biology because he's a biologist and has, you know, amazing books on the topic of cell evolution. But he writes beautifully about this honeymoon effect and also how imperative it is for these couples who come together in this way who inspire people, who bring tears to people's eyes because there's a truth to what they're experiencing that everybody wants to live, that it lights the world. This is how we change the world. It's through little ripples of love. And when you're living an embodied relationship of the possibility of this kind of partnership, then it exposes that possibility to everyone it touches. And it's like, it's medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, we have people come to our house all the time and they're like, I feel amazing here. You know, like, what is it? You know, I feel like, this is this is amazing, you know? And we're like, have a cookie. And it's so funny because we just look at each other, Tiger and I, and we're like, is this for real? Like, this is crazy, you know? And it's been a year and a half, so seriously, it's still, you know, a new relationship in the old paradigm. But as my friend Chris says, you guys are like the most solid relationship of this type that I've seen, because it seems to me like people find what they think is this, and then it goes really hot, and then it's over very quickly. And she's like, I've seen this time and again where people are like, I've met the one, da-da-da. Right. And then, you know, the veils fall off, and all of a sudden, either they're not who you thought they were, or your life circumstances can't support the relationship, or, you know, fear gets in the way, whatever it is, and the relationship ends, and it's usually pretty messy. And what we've had is like the cleanest relationship ever. I mean, like, there's no drama with the exes. My ex and Tiger, like, get along. They're friendly. We've had breakfast together many times with my child. My son calls Tiger Dada-cker and Daddy Daddy, and he's like, I have 2 daddies. And I'm like, oh, everyone thinks they're gay. But, I mean, we've created this real environment of love because the way we started was so honest and so free of expectation. And so even when you're not starting a relationship the way that we did, there's lessons to be taken from that experience, and to teach people to erase any sort of future with someone, because it's never going to be real, ever. Ever. You never have a future with someone. All you have is now. And so you have to be really, really happy with that person right now, as they are, as you are, and really be courageous in being honest with each other. You know, there's no fear when you always know you're going to hear the truth. You might hear something you don't want to hear. And I do conquer demons often on this topic. I mean, I have open relationship demons. I have all sorts of things that I need to conquer because I've been through the whole other side of this. And I'm like, okay, now that's not what I want. And it makes me scared sometimes. Like, I get scared. Like, what if he wants that and I don't? What if, you know, we go somewhere and he wants something different than I want? This is going to end. And then I think, okay, right now that's not true.
Right.
And how has my life unfolded so far? It's been amazing. Even the experiences that I didn't want to happen ended up being huge gifts. So what is there to be afraid of? Nothing. And the real me knows that. And so it's not that I don't have any fear. It's not that I don't have any story about infidelity. It's not that I don't have any of those thoughts that come across, you know, everyone's mental plate. But I do have a tool set now to manage those thoughts and to keep that energy from infiltrating more than a day of my life. And that's, you know, a day in our life is all we have.
Yeah.
So you'd best be working on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I had to be able to sort through what was actually true for me and what wasn't true for me. And everyone talks about, like, live your truth, find your purpose, be authentic. You know, what does all that stuff actually mean?
I know.
You know, what does that mean in real life? Like, how does that feel in your body? And how do you navigate when you're awake at night and your partner's sleeping next to you and you're having all these horrible thoughts of, like, all the things that could go wrong, or like, I want to get married and he doesn't. And what I've learned is that so much of what's going on in our head is complete and absolute fiction. You know, and that's where somebody's like what's her name? It's not Brene Brown, it's the other one, Byron Katie. When she talks about the work and she talks about, you know, analyzing something, is this true? Is this really true? Do I know for a fact that this is true? And when you start dissecting all those little bullshit stories that are going on in your head and really diving into what is actually true, then you know that you're being authentic. Then you know that you're not lying to yourself. Then you know you're not lying to your partner. But you can't be truly honest with your partner until you are brave enough to look at what is true for you. And it's a very, very scary thing, because a lot of times the truth isn't what we want to hear. It isn't the easiest path. It isn't that the marriage that I had was the right marriage. You know, I didn't want that answer. I didn't want to divorce him. I didn't want, that was not my intention. You know, and I got accused of all sorts of things as I was going through that process of, you know, you're a sex addict. You always wanted to divorce me. You know, and I understood his pain, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can see how hurt you are right now, and I am so sorry that you're hurt, and I know that wasn't my intention, and I know that that wasn't where I thought this was going, and I absolutely know that is true. So while you are hurt and I'm sorry, I am not sorry for what I've done, because I was honest. You know, I was honest about the whole thing the whole time. Every time my mind changed, I told you. You know, our minds have to be allowed to change, because change is constant.
Right, right. And that the thing too is that I'm feeling is like being honoring your truth and being honest in that way. It's like also recognizing that doesn't mean that this is going to be your truth forever. Like yours with, okay, my truth right now is that I want to explore an open relationship. But just like leaving
all of a sudden.
Yeah, leaving it there doesn't have to be that means I'm going to have an open relationship the rest of my life.
No, exactly. And so many people are surprised by that. They're like, oh, now you want monogamy? Like, oh, you know, how is that possible? Because many people in both camps, in the monogamous camp and in the open camp, are very dismissive of each other, you know, because there's a lot of fear, I think, in both ways of like, I don't want to go what I feel like is going backwards, back to monogamy.
Right.
Or I don't want to, you know, destroy my relationship and reevaluate what it means to be committed by going down this other road. Whereas now, I mean, it's like, it's the Buddhist middle path, right? It's like everything in moderation. I don't want other sexual partners, because somehow, magically, when I opened myself to the universe and said my life wasn't right, the person who came into my life is so ridiculously compatible with me. Like, there is absolutely no need for anyone else. Like, there's no need. And we just keep evolving and getting better and better and better together. And the feelings that we have, it's like, to know that that's possible, and that's possible with a partner, not with partners, means that there is truth to partnership. There is something true. And there are all sorts of societal myths around that, around what is possible, what is not possible, what we should want, how it's supposed to be a struggle, how you're supposed to get married and it's supposed to feel like a burden. You know, like, there's all these things that are so contradictory to each other, whereas we really do have the possibility of creating divine partnership. Like, what does that mean? What is the sacred feminine? What is the sacred masculine? How do you come together in a way that empowers you both as individuals, and then is so strong like a sequoia tree that, you know, the whole forest around you can get burned, and you're like, that feels like a nice little heat wave, you know? That's what it requires for our babies to germinate. You know, like, it truly is possible. And I love what Bruce Lipton says in his book on the honeymoon effect, that, you know, we are told a story that the honeymoon is supposed to end. And so that it does. You know, like, we don't have the skill set, because no one bothered to teach us how to keep this going, because we were told it was impossible from the beginning. So why would you even try? You know, love is supposed to fade. Right. Love is supposed to change. It's supposed to mature. You know, all of these things that we're taught that do have some truth, but they're not the whole truth. And it's taken a lot of exposure to all these different ideas from Thich Nhat Hanh, from David Data, from Bruce Lipton, for me to coalesce what of those truths for me make up the whole truth. Right. And it's been a real journey, but I have now, you know, compiled all of this wisdom into one life approach. How does a forbidden life look? What are the choices that you're going to have to make? How does that feel in your body? How to deal with conversations that are difficult? How to deal with, you know, the side effects of paradigm fucking? Like, what's going to happen to your life? And most people are not ready for that. So they're like, fuck that. Like, that's terrifying. I don't want my whole life to blow up. Right. And your whole life can literally blow up when you start to make these choices. But it's not a bad thing. Like, it's really not. If your life is going to be blown up, it means that it was meant to blow up. Like, it's not able to be destroyed unless it's time.
Yeah, right. So what part of the fairy tale is sort of the fairy tale is then true, and what part of it is not, because it sounds like you do have a fairy tale now. I mean, you talk about this divine partnership, which again is something that I feel like in my soul, in my bones, that I want that, you know, and it's like, but then sort of balancing that with, okay, but it's not like, this fairy tale that we're fed that's not true. So
Right. Well, the part that is true is that we are love, that we only can truly love another once we love ourselves. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect before your right partner shows up, because we're always a work in progress. Right. And that's something I work with my clients a lot on, is you don't have to be completely set. Like, you don't have to be magically irresistible every minute of the day before this right person shows up. All you have to do is be committed to loving yourself and to the project of loving yourself. You know, every day it's a new choice, every single day. And the other part that is true is that when you are with your partner and your partner is also in this frame of mind, also working on themselves, loving themselves, being the love that they want to see in the world and to receive from you, that together it's like a laser. I mean, it's like this focused beam of light that is so powerful and so magnetic that you can't keep your hands off of each other, that you joke all day long and laugh hysterically, that you have creative ideas coming out of every pore of your body. It's like you are germinating the seeds of creative future. Like, you're not just doing the small human bit of procreation and recreational sex. Like, you together are forming this magic coalescence of potential, and you feed each other. Like, you magnify the other person, so you bring out the best in each other. Absolutely, you bring out the best in each other. I mean, both of us, it's funny, for example, on a really tangible, material, real world thing, we traveled in South America together, and when I'm with him, I speak Spanish so much better than I do by myself. I have a background in speaking French, so when I'm by myself, my mind goes into like French, Spanish, English, no language zone, and I'm like, how do you say this? And yet, when I'm with him, something happens to my body chemistry and to my brain chemistry, where those neurons, those paths open up, and I can understand better, I can communicate, I can be part of conversations, and it's like, I watch it and remark upon it because I'm a scientist, so I'm like, isn't this interesting? Like, here I am sitting on the couch with Tiger, having a conversation in Spanish, like understanding, laughing at everything, contributing, maybe not contributing in the depth that I would like and in the plethora of verb tenses I prefer to use, but I at least can communicate. And then when I'm apart from him, like, some part of my brain changes, and I like just don't have it.
Wow.
And so I see this manifest in a lot of ways like that. My cooking is better. Our sex is better than it's ever been with anyone else. I mean, like, everything that we do together is magnified. And that's not to say that by myself I'm not enough and I'm not great, because I am.
Yeah.
It's just that the best parts of me are brought forward and magnified. And it's the same for him. So that is also very, very true. And also, like, all those myths about being a mom and being not allowed to be sexual and not being seen as sexual and having parenthood get in the way of your sexuality, it's all bullshit. Because when you find the right partner, all of those aspects of yourself, when you're being a beautiful parent and when you're being the right kind of mother, it's going to turn them on like you wouldn't believe. And I didn't know that it was going to be like that. When we were together, we were apart for 8 months. I would visit him in Peru where he was, and I would then come back to my life here with my son, and he hadn't met my son until this last November. And I didn't really know how that was going to be. He didn't know me as a mom. He just knew me as me.
Yeah.
And when he saw me as a mom, it was like, oh my God, like, it turned him on more. It made him feel more solid that he had picked someone that was right, because he's an amazing dad. He's great with kids. And, I kind of knew this about him. I assumed it about him because of the way I'd seen him be. But, that little element that's so hugely important in shifting the world is the way that we parent our children. To see that complement a heavily sexual, beautiful, magical relationship and not detract from it, is hugely insightful for me.
Yeah. Oh, you just talking about all this is like, ah! Okay, so you said in a post that vulnerability is the sexiest thing you'll ever cultivate. And I really want to read this, this one, if you'll allow me to read
Go
this
for
one
it.
part that I just love this. So speaking of, you know, you guys were apart, and then now this is, you were waiting for him to come to San Diego, and you put this entire post together about 5 things I learned about love while blindfolded at the airport. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the gist of it is that you wanted to set up this amazing just surprise for him to welcome him at the airport, which involved you standing there blindfolded with a sign that says, drop your bags and kiss me or something, right?
Right.
And so this, in number 4 of these 5 things you learned, you say, vulnerability is the sexiest thing you'll ever cultivate. And I just love this. Okay, so the electricity of those minutes I spent blindly waiting is something I'll never be able to express in words. My hands stopped shaking. Thank goodness I had a sign to hold and steady myself. And I heard comments and felt stares as people brushed by me. I could barely see the tips of people's shoes as they walked by. I knew he was coming, but I didn't know when. Suddenly, I felt more alive than I could ever before remember. I could have been poked, prodded, bothered, robbed, but I knew I wouldn't be. Radiant love pouring from every molecule was my bodyguard. Wow. Instead, I could hear people whispering around me, stopping in their tracks to join me in waiting. I knew I was ignited. I knew I was beautiful. I could feel it down to the blood pumping through my veins. In those moments, I tasted the flavor of my own delectability, perhaps fully for the first time. As I waited, I realized that this awakening didn't even require that he show up. In my willingness to expose my nakedly blazing love, I'd already shown up for myself. And then below the blindfolds, I saw his shoes and heard the bags drop. Oh my God. Ah! Like, that is just, oh my God. First of all, just the whole point about like you, it's like it didn't even matter. It's like you just doing this just out of love, out of your own love for yourself, and out of your just allowing that love to express. Like it didn't even matter in that moment.
No, and that is the most incredible feeling to recognize in yourself the possibility of love without demand of anything from anyone else. Like that there didn't need to be somebody else on the other end of the line, that the reason that inspired me to go do it is because he was coming. But the way that I felt was so enlivened, so beautiful, so vulnerable that he could have not come and I would have had that feeling for a long time because I had done it. Like I had stepped completely outside of my comfort zone with inspired creativity, and the process of like finding the idea and doing the research and showing up at the airport and then having to change my plans at the last minute and then having to then choose, if I am going to do this, I have to stand between 2 escalators that are coming down with 24 airlines worth of passengers every 5 minutes, you know? And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I was so shaky. And then all of a sudden I wasn't, because it was like that demand on me to just show up was so strong that all those little fears and shakiness that I had just went away, because it was like, you have to do this. You have to say yes. Like, this is what you are here for. You are here to be an example for every single person who will read this story or who will be standing here with you waiting for him to come so they can witness something so different. Like, this is what you're supposed to be in the world. You're supposed to be a spark of love. And that imperative is so much louder than any trepidation that I had. And so, like, that feeling of vulnerability is such a strong feeling. Like, you don't feel weak. You don't feel like a doormat. You don't feel like you're going to be walked all over, because you are standing in the light. Like, you are standing in your own possibility, and you're owning it, and you're making it happen by the moment. And so it's like you are brave enough to be naked, but your nakedness is like the essence of who you are, and you know for a fact it is beautiful. And so you're just like, yeah, I'm naked. And people are like, you're brave. And you're like, really? interesting. You know? I mean, I have heard that a lot when people talk about my videos that I used to do all the time, is that, like, you're so brave for saying this stuff. And it didn't feel brave to me. And I think that's how we know we're being truly vulnerable. Because it doesn't actually feel all that scary. It's like you have to do it. You have to tell the truth. You have to have these conversations. You have to stand naked at the airport blindfolded. I mean, I wasn't literally naked. I was practically naked. I had a dress on, but it was short. And yet, like, I had to do it. Like, I had to show him, like, this is who you are choosing as a partner, because this is who you deserve. This is who I deserve. Like, I deserve to feel like this. And so I am going to feel like this. I am going to own it. And I am not going to be scared of what could happen, because this is the only thing that's true. Yeah. And right now, I'm going to wait for you to drop your bags and pick me up and kiss me. And I cannot wait or see when it is that you're going to come, you know? Like, I can just see the bottoms of people's shoes. And people did talk to me. It was so funny. They were like, how do you know it's going to be him? You know, I could hear guys. And I was like, I can see your shoes, you know? And they're like, oh, you know? And then I would just hear little whisperings all around me, and it was so sweet. Like, I didn't know what the looks were on anyone's faces or anything, because I didn't really care. But after he found me and kissed me, and, you know, he had slid down the banister, because he's like, there she is! And he's sliding down the banister, and he's like, oh shit, she can't see me, she has a blindfold on.
Oh my God.
We're both acting like 6-year-olds, which I think is another thing that gives you a sign that you're on the right track with divine partnership, is that you feel like the child you always were is invited to come out and play all the time. And it's like, we are always kindergartners, right? There's always bullshit classroom politics going on. There's always a popularity contest. Like, we're never, ever actually older than 5. We just age. And so when you find a partner that enables that inner child self of yours to come forward and just, like, dance and play and be wild and free and go climb trees and get muddy and make good food and eat it and be like, this is amazing, like, you're living in a way that is actually alive. And it's like an invitation into the best, most vibrant, creative, soulful, artistic, passionate version of yourself. And we all have her inside of us, all of us. So much of it has been killed by poor parenting and by social constructs and by the schoolyard and bullying and gender politics and man versus woman. And all of that needs to stop. And the only way to stop it is to find it in yourself again and show it to the world.
Okay, so I think I cried like 3 times in this video. Okay, so what can somebody just watching this right now start to do to live their forbidden life? Like something, just a first step, anything?
Well, there's so many ways to start. I think that one of the ways that really triggered all of this for me, I mean, beyond just doing personal development work and meditating, I mean, I always work with my clients on developing meditation practice, which really does help you get clear on what exactly is truth and fiction in your mind, which is hugely important. But I think the biggest starting step for me was, what is it that you actually want? Like, where are you seeing things? I mean, it might be in places that are conventional, like in movies or on TV or in books, or even in other people's relationships or other people's circumstances. Like, what is it that you're envious of? Envy is a huge green go light of where you want to head toward. That's why you envy it, right? Like, you really want that for yourself. So instead of wasting your energy on being envious and like comparing yourself to other people, what is it about that you want? And then start to ask for it. Be brave enough to say, I do want that. Like, I do want that passion. I do want that artistic inspiration. I do want to be able to be a better writer. I do want to drink coffee in the morning. You know, like any little thing that you want to invite into your life that maybe you've been told is wrong or bad, it's time to reevaluate. And it can be the smallest thing. It can be eating chocolate for breakfast, like my client Sue Ann recommends, you know, or it can be having a cup of coffee because you love coffee and it doesn't make you feel like shit, you know, or any of those little things that will help your little moments in life feel more alive for you. And it looks different for every single person. You know, not everybody wants the same things, but to give yourself permission to really look at what it is you actually want. And if it's not currently in your life, to be brave enough to invite it in, to change the circumstances so that it's welcome. And all you have to do is ask, like literally write a list of everything you want and then burn it, because the specifics don't actually matter. It's how you feel when you get those things that matters. And then they're invited to arrive any old way that they feel like. So you want to feel energized? So start with coffee, and then some other solution might just show up at your door.
Wow, I love that. That's a good. I've noticed that in my own life. Like when I would notice the whole jealousy thing, is noticing that. Oh wait, this is really, because I used to ask myself, why can't I have that? And I remember having like a revelation, like an aha moment. Who told you that you can't? And I'm like,
exactly.
And so you turn that jealousy or envy around into, oh, it's just showing me something that's within me that is going, yeah, I want that too. And, oh, I can have it. I deserve to have it too.
Right.
Let me ask.
I can create it. I can create it. And the other thing that I would recommend starting with is that it's imperative to give yourself permission to rewrite your own rules. Because so many of us are living in situations and working in jobs and, you know, being parents and being spouses and, you know, playing all these roles in our lives. And a lot of times they feel like a burden because the role wasn't written how you would prefer it to be scripted. And luckily for us, there really isn't anyone but us who has the power to write our own rules. I mean, there's rules of the road, right? We all agree to follow between the lines, and we agree that green means go and red means stop. Some rules are beneficial for all, but not all of them. So it's time to take a look at what rules you're following in your life that don't serve you anymore, and how can you take the power and ownership to start to rewrite them for yourself and take responsibility for doing that, because nobody can hand you a magic formula.
Right.
There's no right way to do things. The only right way to do things is to choose love. That is the only rule that applies to every situation that works every time, and that is true. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. All the other nuances of how our lives can be built are really up to us. And we get lazy and we just settle into what we've been given because that's what we know, and there's no one out there who's hacking through the jungle of the subconscious to teach us other ways. No, there is not. But, you know, like, you know, it takes our own guts, our own bravery, our own courage to rewrite the rules to really explore how to show up in the world in a more meaningful way. And none of us can do that when we are under a sense of burden and duty. It's just impossible. And that's why the forbidden life is so important, because you no longer feel burdened, and your compassion comes from a truly open heart and not from a sense of duty. And then people can actually receive what you're giving them.
Perfection. Oh my God. Thank you, Beauty, so much. So people
welcome.
Your site is www.
It's www.forbiddenlife.org. Okay. And people can go there. I have lots of thoughts on the blog from when I very first started my journey to happiness. I mean, you'll see stories from my old relationship. You'll see the whole evolution of like what happened when I decided to get divorced, and how did I turn that thought of is this a failure into a different story for myself, and how ultimately the result is this beautiful garden of intimacy that I've learned how to cultivate, because I know now who to invite into it and how to pick out the weeds and what plants really serve the soil that I've developed here, you know, and I'm very intentional about who I invite into this garden, and it's people like you who I know who will honor the intimacy, who will help us spread this message, you know, of possibility and light. And the rest of the people, they can live outside of the garden. It's fine. They have their own purposes, but it's not to feed my soil.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. You've got this program coming up called Forbidden Love. It's all going to be there on the site, yes? Yes, that will be on the site, and it's being built by my partner and I, by Tiger. So it's not about like the rules of dating. It's not for men. It's not for women. It's for humans on how to relate to each other, how to choose love in 7 weeks. You know, 7 weeks, which corresponds with the 7 chakras, which is very intentional, because all of these energetic systems and all of the wisdom that we've had for centuries
still applies, and yet it needs to apply in a way that is grounded in our actual reality with Facebook and email and online dating and all those other things that can be either tools or distractions. So how do you learn to navigate? And how do you learn to cultivate love in this modern world in an anciently wise way? And that's where we are bridging that gap between like spiritual wisdom that's out there that appeals to everyone who's super new agey, but not everyone else. And then the super formulaic dating advice that appeals to a very specific crowd of people, but isn't grounded in the spiritual and therefore can't result in this type of relationship. So there does need to be a bridge, and I think that forbidden love is the way.
Oh, how exciting.
It's very exciting.
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is fabulous. Your show is so inspiring. You've had such great guests. I am like thrilled and honored beyond belief to be here. And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I'm just so inspired by you. Thank you for watching Truth Talks TV. Stay tuned for more, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Peace out.